All right, well, first of all, thank you very much for coming out. My name is Tom, and I'll be showing you around the ballpark for the next hour. We will also have two other tour guides with us, George and Lisa. So if you need any assistance during the tour, I know a lot of people are kind of surprised when they come out of their tours how much walking is involved. A lot of ramps, a lot of stairs. We're actually going to be going up to the top of the ballpark eventually. So if mobility becomes a problem at any point during the tour, certainly see George or Lisa and they can help you out with elevators. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are here for the first time at Fenway? We looked at you before. Oh, a pretty good number. Welcome. Welcome to those of you who've been here before. I can assure you, if you've been here for games, you haven't learned everything there is to know about Fenway Park. There's an awful lot about this park that reveals itself during a tour that does not necessarily become apparent during the game. So I think you're going to come away kind of surprised at how much really is involved in Fenway. We feel this is the most beautiful ballpark, the most unique, and certainly the oldest. It will turn 104 years old as of this April. And there is only one other ballpark in the major leagues that's even close to Fenway Park in both age and appearance. What would that be? That's Wrigley out in Chicago. They're 2 years younger than we are. And that's it, unfortunately. And coming from somebody that just really loves the old ballpark, Wrigley and Fenway are the only other ones left. If you look at the third oldest existing major league ballpark, that is Dodger Stadium out in Los Angeles, which is a beautiful park, but it was built in 1962. It doesn't look anything like Wrigley or Fenway. So we have an awful lot to show you in the next hour. Obviously, an awful lot of history. We're going to get you all around the ballpark. Great day to take pictures. We always encourage people to take as many as they would like. We'll have a recommend because I think our group is going to be growing as we get across the street. I think there's going to be more people with the ticket office. What I would recommend, if you can try to keep it in mind when you're taking your pictures, try to take your pictures while I'm speaking. That way, when we leave and go somewhere else, you're done with your pictures, you're ready to join the group. A lot of times people wait and they take their pictures as the group is moving, and then we kind of get spread out. So it helps to keep everybody together. If you kind of keep your picture taking to the time that I'm speaking, and you'll go ahead and just fire away. So we will start the tour by going across the street, going through security. Either Lisa or George will check their tickets or just have those out. I would also have bags off your shoulder for security to check. And then once we get inside, a lot of people have been asking, we will have a restroom stop, so when you come into the concourse, we'll point out where those are. And then we'll get you into the ballpark and see Fenway. All right, so you can follow me across the street. Okay, folks, again, so if you have bags off of your shoulder and have your tickets out ready to show to George or Lisa, come on in.
Okay, guys. Okay, hold up your tickets so I can see the time. Thank you. Great, thank you.
Thanks. Awesome.
Thank you for your patience also. I think we're about ready to get you into the ballpark. I mentioned Fenway is the oldest park in the major leagues, 104 years old as of this April. We're also one of the smallest. We only have 37,673 seats. They are adding about another 200 in the off-season, but we're never going to be up there with the big guys. Most ballparks today are well over 40,000, but we're always going to be around 37,000, 38,000. This was not the original home of this team, actually. When the team started way back in 1901, they went to Red Sox friendly with the Boston Americans, and they played in the old Huntington Avenue baseball grounds, which was located about a mile from here. Those of you who might be familiar with the Boston area, that park stood where Northeastern University is today. That park was pretty old, pretty run down, pretty small, so the Red Sox were very, very glad in 1912 to move into this ballpark, which started out with 24,000 seats, and we're going to be talking later on about how the park came to look like it does today. There were basically three major renovations that kind of helped to shape Fenway. We want to get you into the park when you're first through. When you walk up this ramp, you'll be facing the signature, and one thing is the signature of the ballpark, and that's our big left-field wall. We have a nickname for the wall, and that is the Green Monster. So that'll be the first thing that you'll be seeing. You'll have your cameras ready. As you walk down the walkway, there will be a photographer from Fan Photo who will offer to take your picture. If you do have your picture taken by them, they will be set up at our last stop. They'll have your finished pictures. So look them over, buy them if you like them, but if you don't like them, there's no obligation to do that. And then once we finish with Fan Photo, we'll take you underneath the stage. Very quick trip through the visitors clubhouse. very small, it's very cramped just getting in and out, so we're going to have one line going in, one line going out. And just kind of fun to see where the visiting team would rush for the ball game. So again, great to have you here. Thank you.
Susan was thinking of you.
Please don't like that.
I would like to go down.
So go down.
We could just stay out of the red seats and just stay up here for the window. That's not what it was. I think it was 4-1. All right, folks, I think with the size of this crowd, we should probably start our descent down into the visitors clubhouse. Now, I know a lot of you have not gone through fan photo yet. When you do, you just need to make your first left, and you'll see us down in the clubhouse area. Again, very tight squeeze down there, one line going in, one line going out. So follow me down this way. Single line, stay to the right, please. That's fan photo. How we doing, young man? Good. Single line, stay to the right, please.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of people, if you could just take a couple of pictures and just keep the line moving, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Done deal. Because of the amount of people we have, if you could just wait a couple of pictures, just keep the line moving up to the top of the line.
Es el vestidor de los visitantes.
No, I don't know if you noticed the white door as you were leaving the clubhouse. But that white door would take them under the stands to the dugout. But they don't have private access to the clubhouse. So when they arrive by bus, the bus leaves them down at the end of that concourse, which is probably maybe a good 300 yards away. They have to walk the concourse just to get into the clubhouse.
I bet they're happy about that.
Yeah, they don't like that because maybe there's tours. Well, they would have to walk by where we first gathered for the tour. So especially teams like the Yankees, where a lot of people recognize them, and they're kind of talking at them as they go by. They're not used to that. So that may not have been the most impressive Major League clubhouse that you've seen. If you've taken other tours, most of the time tours will take you through clubhouses, and if you've been to some of the modern ballparks, they have pretty nice facilities. But this is kind of an exception. But it's certainly better than the accommodations that they had when Fenway first opened in 1912. They didn't have any clubhouses at all. Management felt that that was fine because across the street, out in center field, there was a horse stable. And they decided, why can't they just dress in the horse stable and walk across the street and come in and play the game? So that's what the players had to do for the first 3 years of Fenway's existence. And then finally in the middle teens, I guess management started to feel a little bit guilty. And they put in 2 clubhouses, but they put them not on the third base side, which is where we are now. They put them down on the first base side, and they put them basically right next to each other. And so they just tried to provide one common walkway for the players to share to get down on the field. Well, that worked pretty well when most teams came in, but when teams like the Yankees came in, who were our big rivals, we had some major fights on that walkway. And there was a particularly bad one in 1952 between Bill Martin of the Yankees and Jimmy Pearsall of the Red Sox. And when that happened, management said, you know what, this was not a good idea from the start. It's not going to get any better. We need to do something. So in the off-season of 52, we looked all over Fenway for a place where the visitors could dress. The best place they came up with was the room you just walked through. That was a storage room before they converted it into a clubhouse. Yeah, the players, for the most part, the visiting players, are pretty good about it. I mean, they know when you walk into a ballpark as old as Fenway, you're going to have some limitations. One of the things that they gripe about concerning that clubhouse is the fact that they don't have private access to it. Now, they do have private access to their dugout. You may have noticed there was a white door when you left the clubhouse. That would take them into the space of the dugout. But to get to the clubhouse, they have to walk down the concourse from the end of right field, which is where the bus would leave them off, all the way into the clubhouse. And when they walk down, there might be tourists congregating, there might be groundskeepers around. So there's a lot of people around, and they're not used to that. So that's one of their main gripes anyway. But this is the area that you're standing in right now, is the original entrance to the ballpark. And these ticket booths that you see, these brick structures with the red doors, were abandoned years ago, and they kind of resurrected these in 2012. That was the year of our 100th anniversary. And what they did, starting from 67 and now going to 2013, is they put in memorabilia from each one of those seasons in which we won either the Pennant or the World Series. And they provide a little green button on the door and push that to get an audio playback of the highlights of that particular year. All right, so what I want to do at this point is take you back up the ramps. We're going to go by a display of all the different World Series that we've won, take you down the third base side on our way up to the Green Monster. So you can follow me right up this way.
Excuse me, what is the total length of the field? The length of the field? Yeah. Well, we measure it by like the foul lines, like down this, from home plate down to this corner is 310 feet. It's 420 out where you see that garage door open. Okay. And it's 302, well, kind of hard to see, but right past that crane is a yellow pole. It's 202 feet there.
Pesky pole.
Which makes us one, as far as square footage of the entire field, it's one of the smallest.
Okay.
Also, what makes it small is a lot of ballparks, from the foul lines to the stands, there's a lot of room. At Fenway, there's not, which is why Fenway is one of the better parks to watch a game, because you're a lot closer to the field.
Okay. Nationals, you can get anywhere near the field down there.
I don't remember, I was just there once. There's a lot of foul territory.
Yeah, there is a lot of foul.
Is it as bad as Oakland? Have you ever seen Oakland?
No, I haven't been to Oakland, no.
Oakland is ridiculous. From like the first base box, front row box seats to the field. It's just, you might as well be in the back of the Grand Central. Yeah, off that way out. Now the people that
people that walked into Fenway on opening day in 1912 looked down on basically the same field that you're looking at right now. And the field really has not changed an awful lot. Obviously, everything around it has changed considerably. There were 24,000 basically wooden seats back then. There was one level, that was about it. Later on, when we actually go sit in these grandstand seats, which are the oldest seats in baseball, we'll talk about the different renovations that have taken place at Fenway that actually shaped it into the ballpark that it has become today. But I want to point out one thing about this particular area, again going back to 1912 when the park opened. This particular area where we are right now had absolutely nothing to do with Fenway Park. If you looked out that way, it was all boarded up. You didn't see a ballpark. This was a little office complex, basically. And inside this office complex, was actually a car dealership. And this green partition right here, if you open that up, there's just an open space there. And that was actually an elevator shaft that allowed them to get the cars up to the different levels. There was also, some of you may remember, because this was only taken down about 10 years ago, in that corner of the ballpark, as would be your left, there was actually a bowling alley under Fenway for many years. In fact, when they took the bowling alley down and they built the right field Budweiser deck, they put some bars out there. The bar countertops were actually made from the wood from the bowling alley. So very, very creative here at Fenway. But just kind of jumping ahead, one of the first things that happened at Fenway when our current owners took over in 2002, they wanted to put up more seats. And they got very, very creative because there wasn't an awful lot of room to build, and decided they were going to put seats up on the Green Monster. And that was something that was really unheard of, because on that monster, the look of the monster from 1937 until 2002 was exactly the same. Those of you who are familiar with Fenway, there was a big screen, big net on the top of the wall. Nobody ever envisioned it would look anything different than that. But in 2002, they decided they would put 269 seats up there till the start of 2003. They've become one of the most popular seats in baseball, and if you've never been up there, you're going to see why in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I like to stand in the back.
I apologize for some of you having to stand. We won't be up here very long. I do obviously want to give you a glimpse of, as I said downstairs, one of the more popular seats in baseball today. And when the seats went up in 2002, management was excited, but they were also a little bit nervous because they know that New Englanders don't deal well with change, especially when it comes to a big change at Fenway Park. You're going to have to really do a lot to win them over. So one smart thing they did when they unveiled these seats is they placed them at only $50 a piece. And these seats were bought out in about 75 minutes for the entire season. So management made another quick decision. We will never let season ticket holders get their hands on these seats. There's only 269 of them up here. So they instituted the next year a lottery. And they would start the lottery in late February. You could enter in as many email addresses as you had. And they would do a random drawing in March. And if you won, you won the opportunity to buy 4 tickets for one game. Now, in the course of so many years, the price of a ticket got up to $165, still fairly reasonable. They kept the standing room reasonable, always at about $35. A couple of years ago, they abandoned the lottery. They adopted what the entire ballpark has now, which is dynamic pricing, which gets kind of complicated, but to simplify it, dynamic pricing is primarily based on the draw of the team, or the anticipated draw of the team coming in. So if we're playing the Yankees, it's late September, we're both well up in the standings, and you want to sit in the monster seat. If you're lucky enough to get a seat, it could cost you a couple of $1,000s to sit down there. Generally, these seats during the season are going to run about $150 to $300. Now, you can see, whether you're standing or sitting, that this is definitely a unique view. In fact, as we go around the ballpark, this will probably remain the most unique view you're going to see of Fenway. So the view is obviously a selling point. The other thing that people love up here is that with a monster ticket, you get in for batting practice, you're sitting or standing in the prime area of the ballpark to catch a batting practice home run. Now, in the course of batting practice, which takes a while for both teams to get through it, but you're looking at baseballs coming up an average of once every minute and a half. So you've got pretty good odds of going home with a souvenir, but those who go home with the souvenirs are usually those who come prepared. They bring a hat, they bring a glove, some means of cushioning the blow, because that ball can be going 95, 100 miles an hour as it enters this area. You don't want to tackle that with bare hands. So you need to come prepared if you want to go home with a souvenir. So especially in the cold. Yes, it's even worse. And, you know, this wouldn't be unusual for early April in Boston. So this has become, obviously, these seats caught on very quickly here, but even nationwide, different sports publications poll their readers and asked them where they would sit if they had a choice of any place. And the monster seats are coming way out on top in many cases. So these have been a great addition to the ballpark. And a lot of people have pointed out, as much as there might have been objection at first, these seats right now look like they've always been here. So this really has been the genius of putting these seats in. They've made it blend with the rest of the ballpark. All right, our next longer stop is going to be up behind home plate in that structure that says Fenway Park on it. That's our press box. On the way, we're going to make a couple of very quick stops, and then we're going to head up to the press box. So we're going to go right back in the way we came in. Before we continue, anyone have any questions? No. Right. Well, I think if the original developers of Fenway were still around, they would be amazed at the activity that has taken place at this ballpark since they built it in 1912. I mean, they built it, they said, oh, we're going to build a nice baseball field, and that's the end of it. Well, in the course of so many years, this park has been used for just about every day in sport. You may know we had the NHL Classic here in 2010. We've had a total of 3 professional football teams play here, the last being the Patriots. They were, before they became the New England Patriots, the Boston Patriots, without their own stadium, so they had to kind of use whatever was available around here. We used Fenway a lot in the middle to late 60s. As you know, or as you may know, our owner owns the Liverpool football club, so we've had a lot of soccer here. We've had basketball, we've had boxing, we've had wrestling, you name it, it's taken place here. Movies, did anyone see The Town? You saw The Town, you may remember that final shootout scene that was shot when we congregated at the beginning of the tour. Field of Dreams was shot here, Fever Pitch, Moneyball. Moneyball was shot up in the press box, what we're going to next. And as you can see from this display in front of you, a lot of great concerts are taking place here every summer. They've been very smart about setting this up because the Red Sox, like any other team, are going to have road trips that last a week and a half. Not an awful lot goes on at the ballpark while they're gone. But when they bring in top-notch entertainment, not only you can see these pictures, but pictures like this and this show the kind of crowds that we get for concerts. We only see just a little bit under 38,000, but for concerts we're well over 40 because we cover the field, we let people stand or sit on the field for concerts, so that's been a great addition. So this park has really become so diverse in this use, and it's really been fantastic. It's kind of a year-round ballpark now. I've never seen, nothing really seems to slow it out. All right, something to show you about 50 yards down this way, the newest addition to Fenway.
This is the place to see a show.
Yeah.
So in the off-season, the Red Sox always do something new to Fenway Park. Like this off-season, for example, where you saw that crane out in right field, that's there because they're putting in about 200 new seats up on the top deck in right field. So the additions to the park, the improvements to the park, have always been baseball-oriented with the exception of last year. Last year they put in what you see down below, and that's a vegetable and herb garden we call it Fenway Farms. Just this year they harvested over 4,500 pounds of produce. What they grow here, they serve to the EMC restaurant, which is a luxury restaurant right below us, right behind home plate. So this was just a black collar roof prior to this year, so it's really just added to the appeal of the ballpark. If you want to take a quick shot, go ahead and do that. We're going to start making our way up the stairs, and we're going to walk down to the press box. It's kind of a long walk, unfortunately, because we have to go all the way around the press box just to get inside. So once you take your pictures, you just join the crowd and just follow us up the steps.
rätta mellan varje gång turen går.
Där ser jag utgång för det.
Too much reproducing, which they ended up having no program doing.
Yeah.
Right, we should probably head down to the first one.
So we'll be up here for a few minutes, so certainly sit and relax and enjoy the nice seating. It's a little bit better than the seats I'm going to put you in next. You might want to take some advantage.
All right, so before I talk about the press box and what goes on in this area and the other areas, I do want to solve the mystery of the famous red seat, because I know people always ask, and I don't want to end the tour without talking about it. Some of you may have noticed this already, but if you haven't, if you look out to the top of the right field bleachers, there's a big Ford billboard. I think everybody can see that. And if you let your eye come down about 4 seating sections, just outside of the shadow of the roof, you should be able to make out one red seat with all the green ones around it. Everyone see that one lone red seat out there? Well, that seat is painted. That is actually the most famous seat at Fenway Park, even though it might not be the best viewing area. That is our most famous seat because it marks the landing spot of the longest home run that was ever hit inside of Fenway Park. It's 502 feet from home plate. Just to give you an idea of how far that really is, if you look down to the fence in right field, that's 380. That's a pretty good shot in itself. And the fact that the ball doesn't travel very well in right field, just to hit a home run in right field, pretty tough to do. To hit a ball 502 feet, absolutely seems to be impossible. But Ted Williams did it. In 1946, obviously nobody's ever come close to that. I think Josh Hamilton hit one about 460 a couple of years ago, but nobody has reached that seat since 1946. I think what people remember most about this story is not necessarily how far the seat is or who hit the ball or what year he hit it, but it was that on the day that Ted Williams hit that shot, there was a man sitting in the section of bleachers closest to where that red seat is. His name was Joe Boucher. Joe was from New York, probably one of the few people in the state of New York that actually was a Red Sox fan, and the reason that he was is that he was, first of all, just a big baseball fan, but he did a lot of work here in the city. And he just loved baseball, came out to Fenway whenever he could, and absolutely fell in love with this team in the ballpark. So the Red Sox were home. You were going to find Joe somewhere in Fenway Park. And on this particular day, it was June 9th of 1946, it was Sunday. Teams generally played doubleheaders every Sunday back then. And doubleheaders were a great deal then. They weren't like today where they have a separate admission for each game. If you bought a ticket for a doubleheader in 1946, you got 2 games for the price of 1. So Joe decided, boy, I can't pass up that deal. Weather forecast was great. Let's go to the ballpark and watch baseball. Joe decided to go to both games, but he wanted to sit in the bleachers. And to sit out there for 18 innings, you're taking in a lot of sun. So he puts on a big wide brimmed straw hat just for sun protection, sets out for Fenway. And in game 2, Ted Williams came up. He hit his famous shot. The ball goes off the bat. The ball is coming right at Joe. And as Joe tracked that ball higher up, unfortunately, He lost it in the sun, and the baseball came down, hit him on the side of the head, actually punctured the straw hat, and then bounced a couple of rows back, so they never did recover the baseball. Joe was okay. He stayed conscious, but security got a little bit nervous, and they took him down to first aid and kept him there just a couple of innings just to keep an eye on him, but he was fine. Let him finish out the game. When he got up to leave, standing in that aisle just to the right of the Red Sea was a reporter from the Boston Globe newspaper ready to interview him. And Joe went up to the reporter and he said, look, I've got to get in the first question. How far back do I have to sit at Fenway Park to be safe from Ted Williams? A little ridiculous. Here I am in row 37 and he still got me. And Joe was a good sport. He actually posed with the straw hat, put his finger through the hole that the baseball had made, and the Boston Globe ran the picture the next day with a big caption of bullseye underneath. But Joe is remembered for being the poor unfortunate soul that got hit with the longest ball ever hit at Fenway. So, you are in the area of the press box where the writers would sit for every game. And we have kind of a seniority system here as far as seating goes. The seats are all assigned. Those who get the front row are generally the most experienced writers. A lot of them are members of the Boston Baseball Writers Association who get to vote on the end-of-the-year awards like Most Valuable Player, Rookie of the Year, etc. Here at Fenway, they have one other privilege, and that is that before the game, they get to determine whether the windows are going to be open or closed. They actually slide straight up. Now, on a day like this, we're going to keep the windows closed, but on a nice day, they like fresh air, they'll open them up. As you can see from our proximity to home plate, though, we're in prime foul ball territory. So a lot of balls are coming up here, so you really have to be on your toes here because there's getting a lot of baseballs coming up, and you don't have, obviously, an awful lot of reaction time. There are two people who sit in this particular area who are not writers. The statistician would be one. That person sits right below where I am, first row, right seat, where that monitor is, keeping the stats for both teams, also making periodic announcements to the writers and to the broadcasters next door during the game, giving them information such as the pitcher gets pulled out of the game, how many innings he pitched, how many runs he gave up, how many were earned, home runs, etc. The other person who is not a writer sits in the first row far left. And if you look down there, there's a TV monitor in the corner for him. He is the official scorer. And his job, and it's kind of a thankless one, is to make the final decision on questionable batted balls, are they hits or errors. Once he makes his decision, if you look out at the left field wall at the bottom of the scoreboard, that row that starts with a bat, ball, and strike, at the end you'll see a circled H, circled E, H for hit, E for error. One of the lights would light up under the H or the E to indicate what he's ruled that particular ball to be. He also has a right to change his mind. So you might see an error go up for the Red Sox in the first inning, and in the second inning they take the error down. And basically what probably happened is the official scorer realized he blew the play. He can call up every angle that was shot of that particular play on the monitor. He might look again and say, you know what, it's not an error, it's a hit. So he can change his mind. Thankless job in that whatever he decides, somebody's going to be upset, but obviously the job has to be done. Middle section, you may have noticed coming down, is all for the radio and TV people, both home and the visitors. The people who run the high-definition scoreboards, which are to the left and right of that John Hancock board. The people who run recorded music between selected innings would sit there. And also, the person who runs the only electronic portion of the scoreboard would sit there. Again, if you look at that bottom row, if that ball's striking out in an error, that is the only section of that scoreboard that is electronic. All the scores go up manually. We're one of the few remaining parks to have a manual board. I think Wrigley has one. I think there's definitely one in Houston. There's one in Seattle. I don't know of any others in the majors. I think that's probably about it. But to man that scoreboard properly, we have three guys who work behind there under pretty tough conditions. No heat, no air conditioning, no running water, no restroom. But they love baseball, and some of them have been doing the job for over 20 years. Excuse me? Yeah, Manny used to go back. Manny Ramirez, our left fielder for many years, used to go back there when there was a lull in the action, like maybe they brought in a new pitcher. Sometimes Manny didn't make it back out for the result of the game, so whoops, lost my microphone. That was Manny being Manny, as we call it. That's right, Manny being Manny. But those guys are very busy out there. Obviously, they have to keep the Red Sox board. The only way they see the field between a bat and ball and strike, there are little slits cut in the wall. That's the only way they can see the field and record the score. The American League board is pretty easy to monitor or to manage. They do have Wi-Fi back there so they can monitor what's going on in the other games in the American League. The tough part of that board, though, is the National League scoreboard. From behind the wall,
They don't have access to it. There are big support beams from the monster seats that block them from getting to that wall. So the only way to keep the National League scores on the wall is during the game between selected innings. Somebody has to come out armed with a pile of numbered tiles and walk over to the scoreboard and hang the scores up, which the fans love. I mean, Fenway definitely looks 104 years when that's going on. But obviously this guy has to work pretty quickly because while he's working, there's a team warming up or getting ready for the next inning. But that's one of the many quirks of Fenway Park. All right, folks, any questions before we head down to our last stop? All right, as I've said a couple of times, I do want to kind of recap how this ballpark got started and how the appearance has changed over the years to come to look like the ballpark that it is today. What we're going to do is take the ramps down to the grandstand area. We're going to sit in the first area of the grandstand. Those are the oldest seats in baseball. Just warning you, they may not be the most comfortable. We're on time. Most of you would just sit in close because I don't have a microphone. Plus to keep each other warm.
Oh yeah, no, I couldn't sit through this.
Folks, I was just saying, if you could sit close, I don't have a microphone, so I want to make sure everybody can hear. Are you okay where you are? Right.
Excuse me, sir. What section is this?
This is 17.
Okay,
Yeah.
17.
Yeah.
All right.
You remember that, right?
I'll remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. 3 days from now, you're still sore from sitting in the same seat. So did everybody enjoy the comfort of the press box seats? See what I mean?
Sit on your foam finger.
Now these seats were not here in 1912. About 24,000 seats. These were not among them. When the team moved in, it was kind of a shot in the arm to them. Not that they had not been a good team prior, but when they moved into Fenway, they went on a tear. They won the World Series that year in 1912. They won in 15. They won in 16. They won in 18. Red Sox fans felt like the honeymoon was never going to end. Unfortunately, it came to an abrupt end in the late teens. We began to have some financial problems to the point where our owner, Larry Brzee, needed to trade off some of our key players, many to the Yankees. One, as you probably know, was Babe Ruth. No surprise that the decade in the 20s, probably the worst decade we ever had here at Fenway. Terrible teams, no money to buy better players. Ballpark's beginning to have some problems. We had a series of fires here. We couldn't afford to fix up the burned out section of seats. Not a fun place to come out and watch a ball game. Finally, things turned around for the better in 1933. Tom Yawkey comes up from South Carolina, buys the team, buys the ballpark, and then looking around decides we need a major facelift. So puts about another $2 million into fixing this place up. And one of the first things he did was to rip out the seats that were where you're sitting, and they were just bleacher seats or stone steps, and putting these in. Now, if you look down into the right field corner into fair territory, you see that's where one end of this section is. And if you go all the way around the ballpark, you see it ends down in the Gulf Line. So there are about 12,000 seats here. These are today the oldest seats in baseball. They were put in 1934. They're among the last remaining wooden seats in the game. This is the original wood, the original iron. Probably among the most uncomfortable, the Red Sox will readily admit, but with this much history behind these seats will never ever go anywhere. These are always going to be part of Fenway Park. Another thing that Yawkey did was extend the roof down further down each foul line. Again, just remember, we only had one level when we moved in, but the roof was pretty short, so we extended the roof down further on each foul line. We put more bleacher seats in. The biggest thing he did, what he's most remembered for, is putting up the left field wall. Now, the original wall was about 12 feet shorter than that one. And when home runs started to fly over that wall and break windows of the car dealers across the street, and Mr. Yawkey started getting inundated with bills, we decided we needed a taller wall. So we ripped that one down and put this one up. And for a while, because we had the height advantage that we didn't have before, we kept some more balls in the ballpark. But then we got a player named Jimmy Fox, who just took one look at that wall and said, there's no wall that can stop me, and he's hitting ball after ball over the wall. So Yawkey, to be on the safe side, really kind of overdid it, put up a 23-foot net on the top of the wall. And as we were talking about prior to going up on the Monster, that net remained until 2002. The reason we don't see it now, when they unveiled the Monster seats, they obviously had to take the net down so that people can see. Mr. Yawkey is also responsible for putting in the bullpens, which are just on the other side of the right field wall. Speculation was he put those bullpens in to help Ted Williams hit more home runs. Without those bullpens in, it was 402 feet to hit a home run straightaway right field. Even somebody with Williams' power was going to be kind of limited. Mr. Yawkey put those in the year after Ted arrived. In doing so, he cut off 22 feet to the fence, made it 380. Pretty good target for Ted. He went on to hit 521 career home runs, so I think we helped his cause just a little bit. And Mr. Yawkey is also responsible for the lights. Nothing unusual in 1947 teams to be putting in lights. Most of them were. The holdout was the Cubs. They lasted until 1988. Now, the second big renovation really changed the look of this ballpark. Took place in the middle to late 80s, and that's when Fenway finally started to look like a major league ballpark. We added, and easiest to see on the third base side, we added the second and third level. Second level are luxury seats, or luxury suites. Third level is just a luxury seating section. Doing that made it necessary to put the old press box up on the roof. If you look right behind home plate, at that first level, there's a camera platform right behind the plate. That was the old radio TV booth. That's how low the press box used to be. So that was a huge addition in the appearance of the ballpark and obviously in adding to our capacity. Now, the third major change, the third major renovation that really helped to shape Fenway and make it look like it does today took place when our current owners came in at the end of 2002. Now, they, like Yawkey, had followed a pretty depressing era in Boston baseball because in the late 90s, there had been a very big push in Boston to get rid of Fenway. Management wasn't doing an awful lot about the ballpark because they thought they had a new ballpark coming, so it wasn't a pretty place to come. But there was kind of a tug of war going on in Boston. There were neighborhood groups and preservationists who wanted this park saved, and there were a lot of people who wanted to get rid of it. When the ballpark went up for sale in the middle of this big tug of war, there were 7 bidders. The only group that wanted to keep Fenway was the group that won the bidding, and that was John Henry, Tom Werner, and Larry Aquino. They were the only ones who wanted to save Fenway, and they have backed up their love of this ballpark by putting in almost $300 million worth of additions and changes and renovations. Everything they've done, unlike Yawkey's work, which was downstairs, everything they've done has been upstairs. The Monster seats went in. They put in those high-definition message boards. They put in the Budweiser roof deck, a nice outdoor bar and restaurant. They put in luxury restaurants behind home plate in the blue and the red sections. They've made a lot of additions and improvements that you can't see, meaning improvements on the field. They've given us a new irrigation system. We don't get rained out as much. This field can take a downpour at 6 o'clock and we can play at 7 o'clock, something we were never able to do before. So everything that they have done to improve this ballpark has made them more and more convinced we could be here for maybe 30 more years. Equally good news is the fact that if the day comes, and it's going to come someday, when the Red Sox say, we're moving out, we're building someplace else, they can't tear Fenway down. We're a member of the National Registry of Historic Places, and that membership guarantees that this building can never be taken down. Hopefully it always retains a baseball field. So, excuse me?
I said it's awesome because I want my grandson to see it.
Exactly. So the building will always be here. Folks, do you have any questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, yes, in back. Oh, if you look out on the right field facade, you see numbers 9, 4, 1, etc. Those are all retired numbers. Every ballpark has a display of retired numbers. May not look exactly like ours, but the purpose is the same. Basically, what those numbers mean is that no Red Sox player will ever wear those numbers again. Do you want me to run through the names quickly? Just number 9, Ted Williams. We think that the best hitter that ever lived. Number 4 was Joe Cronin. Joe Cronin may not be a familiar name to you. He played back at a time when you could actually manage a team and play on it at the same time. So for a while, Joe was our manager, and he was also our shortstop. He also, when he retired, became the general manager of the Red Sox and went on to become president of the American League, so a pretty sharp guy. Number 1 is Bobby Doerr, the oldest living member of the Hall of Fame, about 97 years old, still considered to be one of the best second basemen that we ever had. Number 8, Red Sox fans?
Played ball?
Carl Yastrzemski.
Yeah.
Poor Carl Yastrzemski had the unenviable job of taking over for Ted Williams after Ted retired at the end of 1960. He played his entire career here, all 23 years. You don't see that loyalty too often in baseball today, and did a phenomenal job. He was our catcher back in the 70s, best known for his dramatic home run in the 6th game of the 1975 World Series. You may have seen the video of Carlton Fisk frantically waving the baseball fair. Best known for that, but obviously many, many great accomplishments with the Red Sox, and he is a Hall of Famer as well. 6 belongs to Rico Petrocelli, to Johnny Pesky. Johnny Pesky had about a 70-year affiliation with the team, player, manager, scout, broadcaster, goodwill ambassador. We have named the right field tall pole after him. 14, Jim Rice, a great power hitter for the Red Sox in the 70s and 80s, and our left fielder. 45, the newest addition, Pedro Martinez, became a member of the National Hall of Fame this last year. 42.
Jackie
He's up in
Robinson.
every major and minor league ballpark for Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier in baseball. Major League Baseball decided in '97 to retire Jackie's number. It didn't officially become retired until Mariano Rivera retired a few years ago from the Yankees. He was the last one to wear 42. No player will ever wear 42 again, except every April 15th. And that is Jackie Robinson Day, and on that day, every player wears number 42. It's the announcer's nightmare, because not every day. So if they start putting in substitutions, you better know your players. But that is a great tribute to Jackie. Every April 15th is devoted to Jackie and his accomplishments. Yes?
Now, do you think the next number up there will be good copy?
I would say there's a pretty good chance, yeah. And I try not to say that from favoritism. I'm just trying to do it in terms of accomplishments, you know. I mean, you've got to... Oh, 26 is going up, that's right. 26 is going up in May, Wade Boggs.
Oh, yeah.
Our third baseman back in the 80s, former batting champion. Thank you, George, for that. Yes, certainly deserving of that honor, so he is going up as well. All right, so on behalf of George, Lisa, Red Sox, myself, just want to thank you for coming out. It's fun to share the ballpark with you. What we're going to do is walk behind the grandstand seats down to a very small museum. Has a lot of great memorabilia from the beginning of the franchise, beginning of the ballpark. So you see a lot of great displays of Babe Ruth's bat and signed baseballs and pictures of Fenway when he first started out. If you have time, browse around. If you don't have time, if you just continue on the far right, there is a doorway that will take you down on the street. Head photo will either be at the top of the stairs or at the bottom with your finished pictures. So again, thank you for coming. If you just wait for me to leave.
Thank you.
That was nice.